Whenever cortisol is elevated in the fight or flight capacity to save your life, it doesn't know whether you're actually being chased by a tiger or whether you just lost your car keys. It could be that you are running from the tiger. Chances are you're not. It's more likely that you just have a really busy schedule, that you still have a to-do list, which is top of my hormone deal breaker.
What is the mistake that you're seeing women make when it comes to stress and hormones, or even the emotions and hormones too?
I'm not very fond of the word stress. What is stress? It's not very tangible. That's why I like to look at the hormone deal breakers, because these are very tangible things that cause cortisol to elevate. Stress is not bad per se. It's bad if it's...
Hello friends, welcome back to Cancer-Proof Living. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Michelle, an 8-year non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer survivor, mom, and integrative nutrition health coach. After cancer, I wanted more than just survival, so I built a healing roadmap that I couldn't find. Now I guide survivors and cancer-conscious humans to detox, rebuild, and thrive. This episode is all about hormones and the top 10 deal breakers for good hormonal health. I had the privilege to sit down with Robin Nielsen. Robin is a board-certified integrative nutritionist specializing in women's health and hormone balance, empowering women to become the CEO of their own health so they can feel vibrant, confident, and sexy at any age. As founder and CEO of Natural Hormone Solution, she has helped over 100,000 women worldwide through her programs, retreats, and events, including her signature Robin's Hormone Reset program, which has transformed the health of more than 16,500 women since 2020. Robin has interviewed over 200 leading healthcare experts sharing science-backed strategies for natural healing, and has served as president of both the National Association of Women Business Owners and the National Association of Nutrition Professionals. She has also been featured on CBS's Eye on the Bay for her transformative women's retreats. A proud mother and grandmother, Robin is a competitive tennis player, surfer, gardener, musician, and passionate cook, married to her hot, sexy lover for 42 years, living proof that age is just a number. You guys, this episode does not disappoint. Robin shares life-changing information and quick tips on how to heal your hormones. I think you will love every second of it. Now let's grab a pen and paper and let's get started. Robin, we have just entered this amazing conversation where you are talking about one of the biggest problems that we are faced with when testing hormones. Can you share with me your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So we were also talking about how I love to keep things really simple. And I think this will really simplify it for us, because hormones are really confusing. It's not something that we can see or touch, and levels fluctuate constantly. So the other part is they can be high and low in the same day. So it depends when you test and what's going on when you test. And the two hormones that I want you to pay attention to from this day forward are considered your major hormones, and they impact all of your sex hormones, the ones that we're always testing: progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, maybe. And so, though it's good to test those if you want to, but like I say, they can be high, low, same day. But the hormones that we want to pay attention to that really influence these are cortisol, and she's our daytime hormone.
The morning time, right? She's supposed to wake us up in the morning?
Wakes us up in the morning, and she gives us our energy for the day. And she works along with melatonin, because melatonin is our nighttime hormone. So if you have a beautiful cortisol rhythm during the day, you're going to have a lovely melatonin rhythm at night. The problem is we mess with that cortisol rhythm during the day. And for many of us, it's actually backwards or reversed. And so then that causes sleep problems, and sleep turns out is like our hormone fixer. So cortisol gets a bad rap because she's also, along with adrenaline, our fight or flight hormone. And we're the ones who take her out, right? We take her out of that beautiful rhythm. So here are some examples, because I've lived all of it. as many of you have, right? If you're the go-go girl, right, you're taking cortisol out. If you say yes to everything, you're taking cortisol out. And then I've got a whole list of my top 10, what I call hormone deal breakers that take cortisol out of her beautiful rhythm. And whenever cortisol is elevated, unusually in the fight or flight capacity to save your life, your brain's job is to save your life. And it doesn't know whether you're actually being chased by a tiger or whether you just lost your car keys, right? It can't distinguish, but both are, I gotta save you. So cortisol comes up, and the other major hormone is insulin.
Is it true that if cortisol is elevated, then blood sugar or your insulin is elevated as well?
So insulin elevates because it's the lock and key hormone that gets sugar from your bloodstream into your cells to burn for fuel so you can run. And again, it could be that you are, running from the tiger. Chances are you're not, because we just don't have that anymore. Although, we all have scary situations sometimes. But it's more likely that you just have a really busy schedule, that you still have a to-do list, which is like top of my hormone deal breakers.
A to-do list is the top of your hormone?
Yeah, raise your hand if you still have a to-do list.
Oh my gosh. Well, I try to make the to-do list as simple as possible, but I will say this, I'm a recovering type A perfectionist, but it's so hard sometimes to, I feel like I have to make a conscious effort to continuously pull back to honor myself. And not just me, a lot of my clients, preventers, survivors, are also type A perfectionists and this go, go, go mentality.
Let's talk about that, because that's also a hormone brain chemistry imbalance, potentially. And so we can fix that. So yeah, just kind of be aware of your tendencies. And it's one of the things that we look at, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but with our clients is just brain chemistry. Because brain chemistry and hormones work together, and, our gut makes 90% of our serotonin, and it takes some pretty magical things to happen to actually get that serotonin across the blood-brain barrier. So, how many of us have digestive issues? How many of us have digestive issues that we don't even know about? We have a client today, we're reviewing her stool test, right? And she doesn't even think that she has any digestive problem, but she has a really major digestive problem. So we automatically know that her serotonin is going to be low, and she's going to tend towards OCD behavior, towards perfectionism, towards worrying, towards insomnia, right? All these different things. So we just want to take a look sort of holistically, integratively, as you do, at what's going on, so that we don't pigeonhole ourselves into, oh, I'm this way, and so this is kind of how I roll, and I, have to recover from it. It could be that it's just an imbalance. And because you're so busy, you have a mission, like we love our work and we want to help as many people as we can. And you have children, like you are so busy, right? You have a full plate. It's really easy to take too much on. And that was me. I was raising 2 kids. I was running a large company with my husband. I was the president of a couple of other organizations. Yeah. And I was, I said yes to being a den mother for my youngest son because he really wanted to do Cub Scouts. And I didn't know that there was no one to lead it when we said yes. So it's, where do you draw the line? And when you're younger, that gal estrogen, she just keeps us saying yes to everybody's needs.
So when you were in that situation and you had all these competing demands and were just probably overwhelmed by life, how did you help yourself? Or did you start to recognize, or was that like your rock bottom where you're like, oh my gosh, my hormones are messed up, or something doesn't feel right, or I can't run, and operate the way you used to? Like, what was your thought process at that time?
All of that. So what I didn't know is that it was a hormone issue. I didn't know that. Looking back, I could see like the health issues kind of piling on, in my early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, and late 30s, I kind of crashed and burned. So, I had a mini meltdown. I couldn't push through anymore. I had used up all my reserves plus some. And I felt like I was not doing a good job at anything. Like I just, I couldn't keep up the pace anymore. So that was my moment where I said, okay, that's enough. I'm gonna like figure all of my health stuff out. It was really, for me, felt very health related because I had a lot of issues going on. And once I declared that I was going to like figure this out once and for all, then, all of the opportunities started coming my way. And the reason that I realized it was a hormone thing was because my father was seeing an integrative functional endocrinologist like 35 years ago. And she was a pioneer and she was given a population of diabetics. And like, when she was a resident, which like, she's like, seriously, like these people don't get better, so she redid their whole diet. She said, you just go home and eat whatever you want and, keep track of your blood sugar and we'll figure this out. And that's what she did. And it turned into really like this anti-aging protocol. I mean, people lost weight, they got off their diabetic medication, their wrinkles went away, they had more energy, right? Their metabolism really picked up. So she wrote a book. So my father bought me her book. And so long before I went back to school, I was still, running the large company with my husband. I was reading all of her case studies and every case study was me. I felt like every case study was me. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did she do? How did she help this person? I mean, it was the book I could not put down. So anyway, she was a big influence. And so that's when I realized, oh, like, this is what's going on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember the exact name of it.
Okay. Well, maybe you can always email it later. I'll put it in the show notes because it might help so many other. Yeah.
Yes, I will definitely. It's Dr. Diana Schwartzbein is the name of the endocrinologist. And, she later went on to do some kind of crazy hormone therapy, which I'm, not a super fan of, but I'm, just a huge fan of really looking at cortisol and insulin and managing those so that you can make your other hormones. Because if you are running from the tiger constantly, so you're constantly busy or whatever the issue is, you're not making your sex hormones, right? Because they use the same ingredients. So.
And because you don't need your sex hormones when you're running from a tiger. You don't need your digestion when you're running from a tiger, right? It quiets all of that. I actually talk a lot about that in my program because when we come out of cancer treatments, we are so stuck in fight or flight from when we were diagnosed.
Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh. The whole way is a panic.
It's exactly right. It's a complete panic.
It's just a panic, unless you work with someone like yourself or, another integrative oncologist. It's just a panic.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's kind of what you need to get through it sometimes, so you don't have like a mental breakdown in the middle of all of the cancer treatments. But once you're out, right, and you're in recovery, quote unquote, your mindset is still stuck in fight or flight. And so I have a lot of clients that are like, my digestion's still, wacky. It's like, well, of course we've got issues from all the medications and treatments and everything, but it's also the stress, right? Cortisol is elevated. Your body's still thinking we have to save ourselves, run from the tiger, run from the tiger. It's not prioritizing the other hormones that are needed. So,
well, that's a really good point because we get in a certain state with our nervous system. So whether you've, been through cancer treatments, whether you just have lived a busy life, going like crazy, 1,000,000 miles an hour, your nervous system gets stuck there. And it really takes a conscious effort to shift it. Unless you really know, it's a little bit like PTSD. I mean, women in general have been through a lot. We just sort of respond a lot differently to things than men do. And we tend to hold on to a lot of things. And that's where we stay if we don't recognize it and start to do self-care practices that shift it.
Do you feel like trapped or repressed emotion affects our hormones and stays in our body?
It does big time. So I can give you an example. My team and I, we get together once a year for our own retreat. And we started years ago, I was introduced to transformational breathwork or breathwork. I don't do it regularly, but it is going to become something I do regularly because what we discovered as a team is that when we get together and we do the breath work, it is this huge release, which like something like meditation doesn't help us with, yoga doesn't really help us with it, because we're really good at holding our breath, even though you don't think you are, which is so interesting. So really, all 5 of us at our team retreat realize, it's so cute. I have a grandson who's like 16 months now. And so we watch this little show that he likes sometimes when he's over, and they have this little skit about big feelings and how you share, your feelings. And, he has big feelings, and we're doing our breath work, have you ever done breath work?
Okay, so I believe in breath work. I do breath work every single day. And I've also taught my 2 daughters breath work. And it was a really cute idea. They say, smell the flower, blow out the candle.
Yeah, that's the Miss Brain song. Yeah.
That was one. And then the other one is dragon breathing that my daughter actually learned in school. So it's like dragon breathing in dramatically and letting it out. And then they act like dragons. So it becomes a fun thing.
That's so cute. I love that. So that can bring your nervous system down. This is a practice like yoga. So it's, for an hour, and it is work. You breathe in a certain way and you breathe out a certain way. And what we realize as a team is that we all have these really big feelings that are repressed because we become really good at just holding it all together. Like we're just really good at that. I'm really good at just moving on to the next thing and dealing with that. Right? Like that's how I think we learn that as children because we want to make sure that we're loved, right? So we adapt. We're not necessarily who we truly are because we adapt. So the breath work lets out all these really big feelings, and we all had like really big feelings that came up, and it was really, really interesting. And this was the first time I was like, wow. And I thought about it as I started the breath work, and you're laying on your back and you're doing this circular breath work called work because it's work. And it came up, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to feel some stuff. Like you can't not let it out, which is so interesting. So yes, like we are holding stuff in that we don't even know we're holding in.
The key with breath work and with meditation too, but at least with breath work, because you're tapping into the parasympathetic nervous system in such a quick, deep way, you're allowing yourself to heal, to come out of that fight or flight. And when we get into that state, I feel like that's when the emotions come up. That's when we have the ability to process. We can't process in fight or flight because we're just going. We're not slowing down. The second we start slowing down, the second all of it starts to come up. And then it's up to us to make that choice, right? Do we want to stuff it down and bury it, or do we want to deal with it? We want to deal with it. We don't want it to show up in our body in other ways. So I think that's such an important message because who isn't walking around right now dysregulated and having a full plate? It's very hard. Like you said, it's a conscious effort every day to be able to tap into that. So that's really, really important message. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I don't think, just one last thing, I don't think you have to figure your stuff out. So I want to be really clear on that. Like I'm not somebody who wants to rehash every little thing that has come up for me in my life, even every big thing. I just want to process it and let it go. So the breath work is a great way just to let it go, right? Like, and the feelings come up around it and you feel them and you let it go. So I think of it like weather. Weather is going to come in. It might be stormy. You're going to breathe it out and then it's going to get sunshiny again, right? So, but if you don't have the breath work, the breathing, it's hard for me to release. Yeah. So just want to know that's there. We were talking about how it can really keep us stuck in fight or flight if we don't have an outlet like that. So it can keep cortisol elevated.
Do you feel like breath work helps with rebalancing cortisol?
A ton. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it has to become a regular practice.
Is that because it's tapping into the nervous system and cortisol and our nervous system are so intimately connected?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think because you're oxygenating your brain, you're oxygenating all your cells, you're allowing things to release. Because I think we're pretty low in oxygen a lot of times when we're in fight or flight. We're just not, taking enough deep breaths.
So why do you think that, like, when we are going to our OBs and PCPs, I feel like the blood work that we get done, the labs that we get done, and even when you hear all different types of doctors, even integrative doctors speak, I feel like we're always so focused on estrogen and progesterone. I feel like those are the two that we're most familiar with. Why do you think that we're testing that so much more than the cortisol and insulin? I feel like we do test for, but like cortisol, and I know you have to test cortisol different times of the day, and it should be in different, or probably in certain parameters throughout the day. But why do you think doctors are not testing for cortisol as much as we are for estrogen and progesterone?
So they don't know about it, first of all. Of course, they know it's a rhythm, of course they know that, but they're just not taught about, cortisol's role so much in affecting the sex hormones. And quite honestly, I just can't speak to why Western medicine doesn't do that. And oftentimes they'll take a 1 point in time cortisol. And it can give you a little bit of information, and you can, go with that, but it's just not common. It's like, why don't they tell us how to eat or, what to eat? I think that, insulin. So over time with elevated cortisol, insulin has been up a lot as well. And there are a lot of things that cause insulin resistance, right? Which is where the insulin doesn't latch onto the receptor cells anymore for whatever reason, many reasons. And we don't test for that anymore. So most labs we get now are useless, and insurance will only pay for what a doctor thinks might be wrong. So they can only run this many labs. And then if they see something there, they can run more labs. But the basics aren't getting run anymore, like fasting insulin. And insulin resistance looks just like symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause. So, when we blame it, all the symptoms on our sex hormones, we're just wrong. Of course, our sex hormones are out of balance. They can't help but be out of balance because, we're running on cortisol and insulin all the time. If there's just one takeaway, just, pay attention to that and, and start doing things that really support a better cortisol rhythm. And it's just a game changer. And it's so simple. We just don't know about it. So we can't do it. Like, how would we know?
So what are some techniques or things we can do to support that good cortisol balance?
So we just want to start thinking, is this going to support me or is this going to take me out? And so just some basics. It's so good. So this is for women who have an imbalanced cortisol pattern. So, when you first wake up in the morning, your cortisol is pretty low. And then within 2 to 3 hours, you have something called the cortisol awakening response. So you get a nice spike in cortisol, great energy, right? She's your energy hormone. And then, kind of early afternoon, she starts to go down. And then, as the sun goes down, it starts getting dark outside, melatonin comes up. So they have this really beautiful synergistic relationship. A lot of times at night, cortisol is high for women because it's low in the morning and we never get that nice cortisol awakening response. So we kind of wake up later in the day because we've been pushing so hard for so long, or we just don't get enough sleep, or we don't go to bed early enough, or whatever the reason is. We have a lot of hormone deal breakers on our list. So you have to reset your circadian rhythm to feel well. And here's my hot tip for you ladies. Here are 3 steps to reset your circadian rhythm.
I love it.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. The first one is,
Wait, can I guess?
yes, you can guess what they are.
Okay. Is it morning sunlight? Getting up and seeing the sun within the first half hour?
Yes, get sunlight in your eyes in the morning. So, a lot of us wear dark glasses. Dark glasses suppress cortisol, right? So ditch the dark glasses as much as you can, especially in the morning, and get sunlight in your eyes. First thing when you get up, if the sun's out.
Okay, I was going to say, I live in Chicago. The sun now is not coming out for a very long time. So by the time the sun comes up, I've already been awake for like an hour or so. But once I see it, I'm like out there.
Yeah, so you can get something called a happy light, right? Or I even have an alarm clock, and the alarm clock is just light. So, if I set the alarm for 7 in the morning, I can have it start coming, the sunrise started happening at 6:30, and then by 7, it's full light. It's really cool. It's this really cool little.
That is so cool.
It's not an alarm. It's just light because we're supposed to be in sync with the light and dark cycles of the day. So it's a wonderful way for those of us who live in, gloomier climates. My son lives in Portland. Of course he needs, a lot of light in his home. Yeah. Okay. So that's one. Okay. Now we have 2 more. You want to try to guess the 2 others?
Protein first thing in the morning.
Yes, you are rocking this out.
I must be a health coach or something.
You must be. Of course, a high protein breakfast within an hour of waking. And what do we as women do? We skip breakfast.
Yes, so many people do. Or they start off with just straight caffeine and just run off caffeine instead of, because it suppresses your appetite too. So you don't want the breakfast after you're having the coffee.
Oh, it does so many things to hormones. I can't even list. Anyway, we'll get there. And what's the third one?
Third one. Okay. Ooh.
It's a little tougher.
I have so many things that I do, but I don't know if it's directly related to cortisol. I would say that maybe breath work.
Ah, yes, you could definitely do breath work, but
Or like a gratitude journal, like something to like the mind. Like that's what I go to, is more the mental.
so this is a little more fun. I think breath work is great. Absolutely. But this is a little more fun and takes a lot less time. You can have an orgasm.
Okay.
Because we're trying to build oxytocin here, right? We want to get that mama hormone connected. Or you can stimulate your nipples for 1 minute.
Oh my gosh. So how does this, because you're producing oxytocin, like, is that why it just brings down cortisol?
It gets you connected to your body, right? So oxytocin is our connection hormone. So we're not looking for calm, right? We're looking for a nice cortisol rhythm. So that's going to get us energized in a really hormonally balanced way.
Oh my gosh. I would have never thought that. That's amazing. Well, that sounds like a great morning.
I know. It's so fun, right? Good sunlight in your eyes, stimulate your nipples or have an orgasm. That could be delicious. And then have a high protein breakfast within an hour of waking, because food is energy. And as women, we learn to undereat or not eat and over-exercise to fix our body, right? So it's completely backwards. If you want to have a healthy metabolism, you have to eat. If you want to have a beautiful circadian rhythm, cortisol rhythm, you have to eat. Food is energy.
Do you feel as though food, and I'm sure there's more other effective tools out there too, but do you feel like balancing your hormones or fixing your hormones, that food is the easiest tool we kind of have at our fingertips for that?
Absolutely. I absolutely think food is, I've heard you say it's information, it's medicine, it's energy. If you don't eat for hormone balance, which is a really simple thing to do, you're not going to sleep at night. You won't sleep well. And if you don't sleep well, you can't ever have balanced hormones. So it's a real like catch-22. And, I like many women that just, oh, my diet was terrible, and I think that, programs that encourage you to count points or count calories, like that's what we know. And when you start doing that, it just kind of wrecks your chances of eating well and eating enough. Because when you eat whole real food, it's sometimes hard to get enough calories in. And, people, I know you hear this, that they don't want to eat fat because it's so many points or
it'll make you fat.
yeah. And so that's what we learned. And we just sort of have to undo all that so that we can get our metabolism up, because otherwise we're like the hibernating bear. And, you picture this big old fat bear that's going, that's eating a lot, that's going into hibernation for the winter, and their metabolism slows down to nothing. It slows down to where they're just keeping their heart beating and, oxygen coming in and out. And that's about it. And it's because it has no resources. So the metabolism has to slow way down. And that's what we're telling our bodies over and over and over again, or our brain, when we don't eat and we don't drink enough water and we don't get enough rest and we don't get sunlight in our eyes. We're telling our bodies that there just aren't enough resources around. So of course our metabolism is going to slow down, just like the hibernating bear. I love that analogy. And then you're going to store fat when you eat. Yeah.
I agree. And we've been so programmed as women to look at food as the enemy and to count calories and count macros. And it's, even now, if I open up my social media, there's so many people, not saying, there's not a time and place for things, but like when we count, I used to count macros like years and years ago. I used to be so obsessed with it. And I felt so disconnected from my body because it was like I couldn't tap into my own normal hunger cues and this, because it was like I had to meet a certain number every day. So then it's like, you get to a point where I'm like, should I eat now? Should I not eat now? And it's a weird concept, but you're like, you don't trust your body. You're not in tune with your body. And I think it's kind of a dangerous place to be, because that disconnection shouldn't happen. We should always be able to look in and be like, what am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? Because our body's always giving us those signals. And as you said, and talk about like holistic health, right? Everything is so connected. So our hormones are telling us, if we're ovulating, if before we're period, if we need more food, our hunger signals are going to kick up because we need that to have our cycle, right? These things are so connected. And sometimes we quiet all of that down by playing these rules of the fitness game, the diet game that is actually working against us sometimes too.
So true. And women actually have incredible intuition. And, if we just have the space to listen in, our bodies know exactly, what they need. It's when we get running too fast that we don't check in. And, if you're thirsty, you've waited a little bit too long to have a drink, and if you're, starving, you've waited too long to eat, because now it's really easy to overeat and make the wrong food choices. That's why fast food restaurants exist, because we've waited too long and we're in a hurry. And so you overorder and then you overeat because you're not getting any hormone signals, right, of being full or being hungry. So it's kind of a mess if we don't really start paying attention to our schedule more, to what's important, to me time. And it's no joke that estrogen really keeps us serving others. Post-menopause, estrogen's a smaller player. It's our nurturing hormone. Estrogen is our nurturing hormone, and it's the caregiver, hormone. And post-menopause, testosterone plays a bigger role. So it's quite fun because you actually have very strong opinions about things and you actually voice them. That's why women, I think, were put in, asylums because they're like, who is this person? I've never seen her before. She's opinionated and I don't like that. And
like estrogen has left the body. This woman is menopausal and she has things to say.
well, she's crazy. She's crazy. But it's actually like what we've always felt, but now we can actually say it. And it's easier to say no. And a lot of women have started, careers that they've always wanted to do post-menopause. Like there are a lot of women in history who have done great things post-menopause because they didn't feel like they had the same barriers anymore. Like they could just do it, and maybe your kids are raised and, that's a part of it, I'm sure as well. But it's definitely more of a hormonal thing that we just take charge.
So let's take a step back for a second. When we were talking about food and nutrition, what are some of your favorite foods for good hormonal health and balance?
So I'll just give you some basic food rules if that works, because I want, your community to go away with, okay, this is how I do it. So, we already learned that we eat a high protein breakfast within an hour of waking. And every meal needs to be comprised of a healthy protein, a healthy fat, and a healthy carbohydrate, which is, I'm sure, exactly what you teach. But the hormone balance part is you eat then every 4 to 6 hours after your breakfast. So if you let's say you wake up at 6, then you want to eat breakfast by 7. And then, by anywhere from 11 to 1, you want to eat lunch, healthy protein, fat, healthy carb, and I'll explain what those are. And then again, you want to eat, by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, your dinner. And then you want to stop eating by 7 because we become much more insulin resistant after that time. And I know for many of us, you might think I'm crazy. 3 meals a day, seriously? But that's what it takes. You want to keep your cortisol nice and pretty. You've got to eat 3 times a day, sometimes more. So on days when I have a hard workout, I will probably eat more like 5 small meals, just to keep my metabolism up. Because sometimes it's hard to eat enough protein in just 3 meals a day. And I want to be strong and I want to, keep building. I don't want to break down. So there's a concept of kind of building up your body versus breaking down your body. And if we don't feel well, we've been busy breaking our bodies down. And one surefire way to break your body down is to not eat. Because whether you know it or not, your body is eating whether you put food in or not. So it's going to break down muscle tissue and bones and potentially organs to get those vital minerals and vitamins to make basic functions happen in your body. So if you don't put those resources in, those food resources, your proteins, fats, carbs, vitamins, minerals come in those carbs, you're going to break your body down. So when we don't feel well, it's because we're breaking down much faster than we're building up. So we want to reverse that. And food really helps us do that. You want to put the food in that helps you to build your body up, right? You want strong muscles. You want strong bones. I think when I was, late 20s, early 30s, my doctor said, you're the perfect profile for osteoporosis. White woman, thinner, and, my grandmother and my mother both had hip replacements. So I'm like, yeah, probably so, but do we really want to go there? No, not if we don't have to. And when I was like 41, I was diagnosed with osteopenia. So I was well on my way. I'm 63 now and I as far as I know, my bones are in good shape. So I'm pretty happy about that.
It is, and it shows what you can do, what your body can do when you feed it and treat it properly, that it can revert back to a normal state, that if someone's giving you a diagnosis, it doesn't have to be your diagnosis forever. You can reverse things, and you can use that through lifestyle and through food.
I love that so much because you've had a number of guests on who, have done that. And it's so great. And, I had things like varicose veins when I was young. I had the enamel on my teeth had eroded. My gums had receded. I had arthritic condition symptoms in my hands when I was in my 20s. And my father basically died of arthritis.
Oh, gosh. And you were able to reverse all of that?
And I reversed all of it. I grew the enamel on my teeth back. Like I could never eat hot and cold foods. And finally, when I was like early 40s, I could bite into an ice cream, no problem. It all healed. Varicose veins completely went away. You can totally heal cavities. So one of the gals on our team, she had a root canal, which need to be reversed, by the way. And she had a cavity that her dentist was watching, and she was doing the oil pulling just to, keep that area as clean as possible until she had that root canal removed. And didn't help with the bacteria in the root canal, but did totally reverse the cavity. It totally grew back. So our bodies are amazing. Just amazing. And with the right tools, they can absolutely rebuild. So just start thinking about that. Am I building my body up, when you make choices, or am I breaking my body down? And if we don't feel well, we've been breaking our bodies down for, much longer. And so we just have to start thinking, what's going to build my body back up? And, that's getting the right food in, and that's getting good sleep. First and foremost, forget the exercise for a bit if you don't feel well, because that's taking energy. Walking's just fine, but do things that give you energy. If you're, weak and tired and just not feeling your best, give yourself a chance to build back up before you start pushing again.
And so we know that we should not be skipping meals then at that point. And then also we know that we should be avoiding the ultra-processed foods and the foods that are going to make us break down our immune system and harm our gut and make us feel more tired and fatigued at the end of the day. So quality matters just as much as quantity with what we're eating too during those times of the day. Well, I know like protein, fat, and fiber is obviously going to help regulate your insulin and blood sugar levels. Is there certain foods that help support cortisol levels?
So your meal timing is really important. And what else is really important is to avoid, ultra-processed foods are not even a part of this conversation. Don't bring the enemy home, people, right? If you want to have like an ice cream or, you want to have some chips, go out and get an ice cream, 1 scoop or something, but don't bring the whole half gallon home. And go out and get some chips and share it with a bunch of friends, and just don't bring it home. Because whatever you bring home, you're going to eat. So I'm just talking about whole real foods, like foods that you can find in the vegetable fruit section of your grocery store or at the farmer's market, meats. So food is either inflammatory or is anti-inflammatory. And eat the anti-inflammatory foods. Those are, proteins that have eaten the four-leggeds 100% grass-fed, 100% on grass, not grass-fed, but they live their whole lives on grass because they're all grain-fed at the end. If you're, if you're not careful,
grass-fed, grass-finished is the important thing to look for.
Grass-fed, grass-finished, except for lamb. I think lamb is always 100%.
Yeah, it is.
And then, same thing with chickens. We feed. There's a company here in California that, you find their chicken everywhere. And probably 15 years ago, I called them because I was looking for a free-range turkey. And they said, no, we feed our turkeys and chickens grain, It's organic, right? But it's all grain, same thing. That's an inflammatory food. So chickens were meant to eat bugs and worms and grass and, all these things out in nature, and they get fed corn and soy like every other animal. So that's an inflammatory food. So just kind of know your rancher and your farmer. There are definitely stages of transition. So if you're just getting started and you're overwhelmed and thinking, oh, wow, now I got to go buy this certain type of protein, just start with a protein. And then, as you start feeling better, you can worry more about where that protein comes from.
Yeah, for finding it in.
But, eggs are a great source, chicken, turkey. And then, if we think about calcium as the only thing that builds bone, we are totally kidding ourselves. It takes about 20 different nutrients. So also builds your brain chemistry. Protein builds muscle. Like, it's essential for building yourself up. So if you want to build up and feel strong and energetic, you've got to eat protein. And then, and I'm sure Michelle's talked a lot about this. So this is, just sort of a reiteration of what she's been telling you. And fats, they are our brain is mostly fat. So of course we need fats, but here's what you might not know. And that is that cholesterol is the mama of all of our steroid hormones. We need cholesterol to actually make cortisol and estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, pregnenolone, a hormone called aldosterone, which regulates electrolytes for our kidneys. So when we artificially, or when we worry about cholesterol so much so that it gets too low, we cannot be hormonally balanced. That might be a really big, important takeaway.
I've been seeing research all over the place about how higher cholesterol levels are linked to like lower risk of certain diseases and things like that. And I wondered if it is hormonally related because of that. I tend to have higher cholesterol. I also eat a lot of animal products and meats and proteins and things like that. Very good quality, but I don't worry. I just don't worry about my cholesterol. It's not a blip on my radar in some regard, but I do see this research everywhere, but I didn't realize that it was hormonally connected.
It is so crazy hormonally connected. You wouldn't believe it. And as we age, we actually need more cholesterol because our ovaries stop producing, estrogen. We need more cholesterol. And so we actually, our optimal ranges get higher, as you age for where we want that cholesterol to be. So really important to have ample amounts of cholesterol. She's a very important fat. And so it depends, like your genetics. It depends on genetics, kind of how much saturated fat you can tolerate. But the bottom line, just eat, healthy proteins and you're doing good. And then fat also is really important for nerve function, right? And it's important for, like we talked about, building hormones. So it's really important for a lot of things. And we find that in a lot of places, right? All animal products will have fats, and egg yolks are really important, and nuts and seeds, and those are very important. And yeah, what else can you think of? Olives are great, coconut,
Avocados and olive oil. Mm-hmm. Isn't it so crazy too how we were in such a stretch of like the 90s of the low fat era where don't consume fat, and there was this fear of fat.
And then that's when diabetes went crazy.
Because you replaced fat with sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then we get to our carbohydrates. And when you think of carbohydrates, we often think of flour products. And so if you could do a flour-free diet, you would just save yourself so much angst. But when I say carbs, it's really in the form of vegetables. Vegetables contain fiber, which is a game changer for balancing hormones, by the way. And they also contain vitamins and minerals. Most of your vitamins and minerals come from vegetables, and a little bit of fruits is fine. Berries are my favorite fruits because they're higher in fiber and lower in sugar. And then, the starchy carbs, so the root vegetables or the squashes are so important because of their color and their fiber. And so one of the things that we get into is we eat too little carb. We don't get enough calories from carb. That's my downfall. And if we don't get enough calories from carb, because that's really energy, you're going to stress your adrenals. So we don't want to keep stressing adrenal function. So cortisol is going to come up. So just make sure that you're getting enough, and minimum like 20 20 grams of carbs per meal, minimum, and we're on this keto thing where we eat zero carbs and then we're just stressed out all the time. So it's really important to get enough carbon, especially at your nighttime meal, because that helps serotonin cross the blood-brain barrier so you can sleep.
Okay, that's really good advice too. Okay, this is going to be, because what I'm about to say affects everything in our body and is the precursor to most diseases out there, if not every. How do you feel stress plays a role in our hormones, and especially as women? And we kind of talked about this when we started the podcast, right? When we're stressed out and we're balancing all of these competing demands and we're busy. But like I tell my clients this all the time, like if you can't heal if you're continuously in stress and not having stress management techniques, right? Your digestion is going to suffer. Your cortisol, I'm sure, is going to suffer, and your sex hormones are going to suffer. But what is like the mistake that you're seeing women make when it comes to stress and hormones, or even like the emotions and hormones too?
I'm not very fond of the word stress, to be quite honest, because it's overused in the sense that, yes, like stress is a real driver of hormone imbalance because it raises cortisol. But what is stress? And when we use the word stress, it's so obscure, kind of, it's not very tangible. So that's why I like to look at like the hormone deal breakers, because these are very tangible things that cause cortisol to elevate. And stress is not bad per se, it's bad if it's constant.
Yeah, the chronic, yeah.
That's where it's bad. So if you give me like an example of stress, like what is a common stressor that women experience, and then how does that impact everything? That might be a better conversation.
Well, I think that a lot of women that I know that I coach wake up in the morning, they have coffee, they work out fasted. They have 1 to 3 kids. They're getting them on the school bus. They're taking them to school. They're working full time, managing the household, cooking, cleaning, all of the things. And then, at the end of the day, cleaning up and getting ready for bed and crashing. And I feel like a lot of the people that I'm talking about, I have this group that are still considered very healthy. There's nothing per se wrong. And then I have the other group that falls into preventers, cancer preventers and survivors who are still trying to fight off something and live this life, but they have gone into the crossfire of like the old me versus the new me, and I still have to get these things done, but they don't have the tools or understand from like the whole perspective how these micro habits and decisions are really affecting their health long term, and hormones specifically, right? And then it's like, I can't lose weight. How do I lose weight? And it's just, the full picture. There's so much that needs to change, because the stress, and maybe that kind of stress is just the daily stress, but in my opinion, it also can turn chronic, because when you're doing that day in and day out, there's no off button. When you're working all up until the moment you're crashing into bed, there's no downtime. And so we are just running off fumes. And I think that has become the norm. And I think it's really celebrated in our society. Like, get as much done or have a glass of wine, it's mom time and this, and we don't realize sometimes how these micro habits and decisions are really playing a part in the bigger picture.
They are, for sure. And I think, if they're here on this podcast, they have an awareness now that the way that they're living their lives is taking them out. And, especially a woman who still has a menstrual cycle, if you just look back 90 days, to what big stressor happened, if your menstrual cycle gets off track, if it gets heavier, if it's shorter, if, whatever it is, if it changes, you can usually go back to some event that happened that really set your hormones off balance. But if you have a chronic situation, which, is definitely where I was, is just chronically busy, that's just an awareness thing. I had no idea that my schedule was taking me out. And not only that, but I just got to a point somewhere along the line. It was probably pretty early on in my life's journey that if I wanted something done, I had to do it myself. And I could, it would be done right if I did it myself. And so I became, kind of righteous. And then I became really resentful because no one was helping me. And I went through all this stuff that many of us go through until I realized I was taking me out.
You're like, me, it's me. I have the problem.
And so resentment is really just a lack of self-care. Ladies, it's just a lack of self-care. So if you're feeling resentful, just stop. Stop, ask for help. And also ask yourself the question over and over, do I really have to do this right now? I still ask myself that every day. And I know that when I'm so here's another hot tip. If you are running from one task to the next, your cortisol is elevated. That is a cortisol out of balance situation. So running from one task to the next is a cortisol out of balance scenario. So catch yourself when you say, oh, I just got to do this one more thing. I am queen of, I'm going to do this real quick. And I put my lunch off sometimes because I just have to get that one more thing done. I will catch myself and say, no, I don't. Stop. Right? Go have lunch.
That's a good mindset shift. I love that. That's a really good mindset shift that I think everyone could use.
Yeah. Just ask yourself a question. Do I really have to do this right now? Of course you don't. Right? And just stop. And that's where the to-do list is. That's a real thorn in our sides. It's because it just takes us out. It never gets smaller. It's always there. We feel good for an instant when you cross something off, but it is a real cortisol producer is your to-do list. So just one quick shift on that. And the other reason it's a real problem is because most of the time, the things on your to-do list are not in your calendar. So they're extra things. And so if you just shift all of those things on your to-do list to your calendar, make time for them, and throw the to-do list away, you're going to support your hormones in a hugely powerful way. And make it a rule that there's no to-do list, that whatever you have to do just goes right into your calendar, because now you've made time for it and it's going to get done. So you don't have to worry that it's going to, has to be on some paper somewhere. And if you find that you're moving that thing on your calendar, you didn't get it done today. You sort of looked at it, but you're like, no, not going to do that today. If you've moved it more than twice, it needs to be delegated.
That's a great, great piece of advice. And I love that. Then you're not running off of two separate lists, your calendar and then your to-do list. Because you're right. The to-do list is just on top of everything else that you have to do that day. And as women, we have the forever list that's running through our head at all times, that it's just so much pressure that we're also putting on ourselves, and that we have to live up to this expectation. So when you were kind of in the middle of all of your storm of cortisol and busyness, what was the first step you took to break free from that?
Well, it was when I had my mini meltdown and I just vowed. So I chose. I mean, that's something that's really important to do, because we're choosing all day long unconsciously. So stop doing that. Start choosing consciously exactly what you want. So I chose to figure my health stuff out, because I could gain 5 pounds in a day for no good reason. My weight was driving me crazy. I had acne on my face, my back, and my chest for 3 decades. It was awful. And I just was over it. I'm like, that's enough. There has to be a solution. And, we didn't really have Dr. Google then. And so I really had to go back to school to figure it out. And it was all just for me. It was just for me. I had no, intention of teaching this. So anyway, that was it. I chose to figure my stuff out. Just choose, choose you over and over and over and over again every day. Just choose.
Because not choosing is also a choice too. like you said, the unconscious.
And it's living by default. And here's the deal, when you live by default, you're never really in. Never. You're not in, you're not out. Things are happening to you. So you're in a victim place. Let's stop being in the victim place. Let's take charge. Let's say yes to ourselves. I said yes to every single opportunity that came my way when I chose to figure my stuff out. You have to say yes to what you want. And it wasn't convenient. I was running a business. We ended up selling the business so I could go back to school and do other, follow this path. So it's not always convenient, but it's a sign that you're choosing, that you're consciously choosing, your destiny. Things aren't happening to you anymore. Things weren't happening to me.
And it's such a powerful and empowering thing too, because I think when you get sick and tired of your own shit, when you take control and take the reins, you feel good about it. And it completely changes the mindset of health too, because it's like, no, I'm doing something about it. I'm figuring it out. And all of a sudden your nervous system starts to calm down because you're not like always worrying and things,
not reacting all the time.
I agree with you. When I took control of my health a few years ago with Hashimoto's, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, shocker there. But it was like, finally, I'm in control. I'm figuring out the root cause. I'm going to do this. I will make the choices. And it's hard. Like you said, it's very hard. It's very hard to choose yourself over and over. It's very hard to say no to things that you always do. People don't like it. It's very hard to put boundaries in place. It's very hard to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to come home for that. I'm not going to, it's very hard, but you have to choose yourself over and over. And it's so empowering in so many different ways.
It's so empowering. Post-menopause, it'll get a lot easier. And those who mind don't matter. And those who
matter don't mind.
Matter don't mind. Thank you.
Yes.
And so you have to be willing to let go all the time. Make your choice. Choose you and let go of the outcome. People are going to fall. It's just the way it goes, right? And that's okay.
And you've mentioned throughout this podcast, as we kind of wrap up here, you've mentioned a few times these 10 deal breakers for hormonal health. Okay. So you mentioned, or give us a few more so we can learn from you and follow and really understand tomorrow to wake up and to make the right decisions and to put ourselves on a good health track. What are some of those other 10?
Yeah, so these are the root causes. So you had mentioned, kind of figuring out your root causes of Hashimoto's, right? There's always more than one. And these are kind of the stealth things that we don't really know are taking us out, but they are. And so we talked about diet, a poor diet. So not the right meal composition, not the right food, not the right timing for hormone balance. That will take you out. That's a root cause of hormone imbalance. It's going to raise cortisol and raise insulin, which we don't want. Not enough nutrients. So we're all really nutrient deficient. Not enough vitamins and minerals. Basic stuff. Like I take a lot of nutrients. My body needs that. I feel so much better. Toxins of all kinds. So you and I talked about toxins a little bit, in our skincare and body care products and just in our household cleaning products. They take us out. Environmental toxins take us out. That's why we want to eat, healthy foods. It causes something called toxin overload in our bodies. And when we get on toxin overload, which means our detox system just can't keep up anymore, that's when we start to feel really sick. But also toxic relationships, toxic habits of mind, right? Toxic thoughts.
That relationship with ourselves can be very toxic. Yeah.
Really toxic for women. It kind of breaks my heart. I was one of them.
And I think women deal with that a lot more than men. How I heard on a Dr. Josh Axe podcast, he was saying that people that struggle with autoimmune disease and certain breast cancers, their mind frame is we kind of attack ourselves. And that's could be why our body's also attacking ourselves through autoimmune conditions.
Yeah. So every cell in your body registers emotion. So it doesn't just stay right here. Everything you think kind of
Has a chain reaction through our
chain reaction. It resonates in every cell. So we don't have control over what comes in, but we have control over how long it stays there. So you can turn it into actually the opposite pretty quickly, and just start training yourself to look for what's good. The benefits of gratitude on our hormones is enormous. So just, say 3 things you're grateful for and you're good. Just keep that going all day. Low-grade infections, so chronic infections. You might not know that you have a chronic infection going on. You had Hashimoto's. That's a chronic infection, right? You got to kind of figure these things out. And then, you got to support your immune system and your gut and, get yourself healed and stronger. Hashimoto's is super common for women. It's a very common thing. And it's so good that you know about it so that you can address it.
I reversed it. Yeah, I actually reversed it.
You have to name it so that we can change it, right? Digestion, fixing your digestion is key. It's critical, and a lot of medications actually take our digestion out, a lot of long-term medications. And so just, knowing what those are. And medications can also be a root cause because medications change pathways. And it's a deal breaker. Insulin resistance, is something that is a root cause and that we might not know about, but you need to know about it so you can fix it. So, you have to get your fasting insulin done, hemoglobin A1C, which is where your blood sugar has been over the last 3 months, very important. Glucose, I think, is a number that's not useful at all, but hemoglobin A1C, very useful. Fasting insulin, very useful.
How often do you recommend getting like cortisol level checks? Say someone's going to like a functional doctor, they want to come and see you because you said it fluctuates so much. Like I know when I was seeing my functional doctor for Hashis, I got all of my cortisol testing done. That was a few years ago, but I haven't had it tested since. And I also have fought with my neuroendocrinologist and my oncologist on getting certain tests done with hormones, especially I'm 41 and going into a different stage. They won't cover it. They won't cover any of it.
No. So that's where we need to just, get that in our budget somehow, is that we need to pay for our own testing. And it's gotten, pretty affordable, these days to do our own testing. I think what's important is to sort of have a list of what that is, what tests are really important to have. And I'm happy to send that to you. What we test for in our program. I think blood work has been, foundation for me and my clients for 20 years. Like that's where I start because you can see a lot of hormone deal breakers in there. We check, most women are very deficient in magnesium, and we check magnesium intracellular, so the red blood cell magnesium. We check, a zinc RBC. We do check the thyroid antibodies, which doctors just don't check anymore. So there are a lot of things that we check just to, to rule stuff out. And we're not, I want to be really clear, we're not looking for disease.
Mm-hmm. It's just a measurement tool of seeing where everything's at, right?
We're not looking for what's wrong. We're just looking for where you need support. And that's a very different mindset. So when you go to your doctor, they're looking for what's wrong. And they're going to, if you get the 4-letter word, you're fine, all that means is that you don't have disease yet. That's all that means. So just, what they'll say is, let's recheck this in a year. And then when you have disease, I can medicate you for it. So that's kind of how you interpret that. But you don't want to stay just disease free. You want to feel great. Like you want to have your numbers in optimal reference ranges. I can't express that enough. It's really important to know what optimal reference ranges are because it doesn't get easier as we age. It gets harder. So start paying attention now. And it's a great way to help your body be strong. I think that's, I am a believer that we all have cancer cells in our bodies. They're just cells that have, morphed. And, it's when we get depleted that it's easy for them to proliferate. And so there are some basic things, as Michelle has taught you, that you need to pay attention to around that. But you also need to keep your body as strong as possible. And there's a lot of research out now around, how a strong immune system is not only fantastic for an anti-cancer protocol, but it's also fantastic for aging well. So that's kind of what's come out recently from Dr. Jeffrey Bland. And I totally, believe that. Of course, having a strong immune system is going to help you age better.
It's everything. Our gut health, we know at least 70% of our immune system lives in our gut. It's absolutely everything. So I want everybody that's listening that's a cancer preventer too, if you're looking to prevent a reoccurrence, this is such incredible advice. It's so important. By the time we get to the doctor and they see something, we don't have to get to that point. We can get to a point of prevention where every day we're making choices, just as Robin has told us throughout this entire podcast, of how to better support our hormones in our body, because we deserve it. We don't want to get to that point where we have to medicate and we have to turn into a diagnosis or a disease. It's such a different mindset to say, I want to support my body and build my body up for preventative purposes versus the opposite. That mindset shift can really change how you think and look about health. So I think it's so incredibly important. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for all of that information. Tell me, because I'm interested, I'll selfishly ask you, I think I have some cortisol imbalances going on, but tell me about your programs that you offer, where people can find you, and what your solutions are all about.
Yeah, so we actually, for your audience, we have put together, it's a fantastic hormone assessment. So if you want to offer that to your audience, it's great. So we go over 6 hormones. We go over the 2 biggies, which are
insulin and cortisol.
And then we go over the sex hormones, right?
Estrogen, progesterone, DHEA.
Or just testosterone. We don't do DHEA. Testosterone. So progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and then thyroid hormones. So we go over 6 hormones and we go over really just the symptoms that are associated with each one. So with cortisol, you get symptoms associated with high cortisol, symptoms associated with low cortisol. Progesterone is just low progesterone because that's often the state that your progesterone is in when you don't feel well. And then also testosterone, insulin. There's one more that we get, in estrogen, you get high and low estrogen, which is really important for you to know. And so if you would like to offer that to your community, we have a special page just for you with that URL, and we can get you that. And then we have a lovely Facebook group. It's called Natural Solutions for Hormone Balance. I believe that's what it is, where you can stay in touch with us. And then we just, our big signature program for every single woman, it's affordable for every single woman, is called Robin's Hormone Reset. And that comes up in January and May. And it's just really an educational time to really learn what's going on, with your hormones and kind of identify what's going on for you, and then, get next steps to resolve your health challenges.
How long does it take to rebalance or reset your hormones? I'm sure it's different for everyone and what they're kind of dealing with, but I know that you probably see amazing success stories on your side of it all. Do you see a common thread of usually within a month, people are starting to feel better, or 2 weeks? What does that look like time-wise?
It can happen pretty quickly depending on how much you follow our program. So, some ladies are gung-ho and they can jump right in and they can do it. We tend to attract women who have been on this path for a while. So they've been taking supplements, they've changed their diet, they've maybe done some testing. We've helped a lot of practitioners. I think where we shine is we sort of help you pull it all together. We do quite a bit of testing, but we actually do it more step by step because there's a method to our madness, and there's a sort of, as you know, there's a way that our bodies work. So you can feel a lot better pretty quickly if you're able to implement right away the things that we share with you. If you're really exhausted, it's going to take more time. So it's going to take more time just for us to get you built up enough so that you have the energy to start doing some of the things, but you'll still feel, pretty good, pretty fast. Our digestive tract lining, renews every 3 days. So, and hormones can, when you when you do our, 3 little magic steps for resetting your circadian rhythm, you can start feeling better, a lot faster. There are all these things that are just game changers, when you like start eating for hormone balance. And it's very easy though for that resistance wall to come up and to say, oh my gosh, that's going to be too much food for me. You know, I mean, we make up all this stuff, like eating 3 meals a day is going to be way too much food. And I get it because I was the don't eat breakfast, over exercise, mocha, pastry girl. Like that's how I rolled. And I was a mess. So, and talk about not being able to like manage your weight that way. It's impossible, to not eat breakfast and then go over exercise and then, eat a bunch of sugar, like crazy bad.
I would also assume too, because I know there's a lot of people out there that fast or do intermittent fasting, that when you're on this hormone journey and healing hormones, that maybe that needs to pause until you heal. And then there's always a time and place, because I also I love doing fasting. I love Dr. Mindy's book, like fast like a wolf. Like I think that there's a lot of great things in it, but I feel like when you're healing or when your body's so run down, it can just work against you in such a big way if you're not doing it correctly or not in tune or understanding how your hormones are reacting to it too.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting. Here's when you do intermittent fasting. You do it between dinner and breakfast. 12 hours minimum, 13 hours even better. Perfect. Right? That's when you do your intermittent fasting because that's when you're healing. Your body's either digesting or healing, but it's not doing both. So use that time. That's why you stop eating by 7, right? And I like to stop eating by 6. It just supports me way better.
I know. I'm like, we eat dinner very early. I have at least 3 hours. I really want melatonin to come out. I want insulin to go away. We know that it's so incredibly important. Sleep is so important. So I agree.
Well, good job. That's so great. And, you're raising kids who are going to go off to college and do so great, with their food.
I hope so.
Oh, my kids, I didn't get them started till they were 14 and 17 because I was doing my stuff and I asked them if they, they wanted to come along. And the whole family said yes. And they went off to college and they did great. Like they could, they could cook for themselves. They could make good choices in the cafeteria. So your kids are so blessed.
In the mom world right now with the younger kids, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. It is very hard because I teach, but they don't truly understand. Like they know, oh, we don't have dyes in our food and we don't go for the goldfish. Like they know all of that stuff. But when you go to school, when you go to birthday parties, when you are around other people and there's mini muffins being thrown at you and Cheez-Its and Skittles and Sour Patch, it's hard for them to resist too, and our nation is very much revolving around that. And hopefully there's a shift and a change happening because the moms out there that are really trying to do better for this next generation, it's an uphill battle, especially in the schools. That's like a whole nother podcast, but especially in the schools, it's really, really difficult. But I appreciate you saying that. And just to hear that your kids were because it's also hard to get older kids to change over and shift over and look at food differently. So it sounds like you did an amazing job.
Well, here's the really cool part is that our whole thing was that I just said, because my older son could drive. And I said, if you guys want something that is not in the house, just go get it, but just don't bring it home. So they did that, although I don't even know if they did that. But when their friends came over, their friends had the liter of soda, and the bags of Jack in the Box or Taco Bell or whatever it was. And I'm like, that's fine. They can just, because they knew that, we just had healthy food in the house. But 3 of their friends became really health conscious eaters. And one day, this happened, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. One day I looked at my LinkedIn profile. Don't find me there because I never go there. And there was a testimonial from one of my older son's friends who's now like 45 years old. And he said, Mrs. Nielsen is responsible for me eating so much better and taking good care of my family. It just brought me to tears. Oh,
That's amazing.
so you never know like the impact that you're having. And, one of the girlfriends came in and started talking, Mrs. Nielsen, why do you do this? And why don't you do that? And, and she became a really healthy eater. So you're making really like good shifts in kids' lives and you won't know it for a while, but it's going to happen. You're going to see it come back.
Thank you. And I'm so glad you got that reinforcement too. Like how amazing. And you're right. You never know who's listening. You never know who's watching you and what your example can do. And if it's helping one person, it's working. And it's amazing to see just, you know, that kids, teenagers, whom however old you are still thirsty for this information and want it. And wow, look at how different their lives are because of it. Because truly, if you can teach someone how to eat well and how to take care of themselves, you're teaching them how to have the best life in front of them. It's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Well, you've just been so absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. Will you tell everybody your Instagram handle and your website as well? And you guys, I will have all of this in the show notes, including the quiz that she mentioned as well.
Instagram is, oh my gosh, I'm terrible with this. It's just at, I think, Robin Nielsen. Robin, Robin, and then Nielsen, Nielsen. And my website is just Natural Hormone Solution. It's not plural, just naturalhormonesolution.com. Yeah. And everything that we talked about there is on there. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for this conversation and so grateful that you are supporting, anyone who's experienced cancer and, disseminating such great information. I was sharing with Michelle that my husband, AKA my hot, sexy lover, because it's super fun links when that comes up on your phone, has had cancer twice. Just navigating that and, what all the stuff that Michelle says is exactly right. Both, in the Western medical world and, in the integrative space. And we need both. So
We do need both. And he's doing so good. And wow, to have you by his side to help him through this too is there couldn't have been a better person. Yeah. And look how much, you guys are going to grow and change as a couple too. And,
oh, we have. Yeah. It's been a while now. It's been over 4 years, since he's been free and clear, but you definitely grow a lot.
Yep. And you're meant to. I think that these things happen sometimes to crack us open, and it's our job to figure out how to grow with them and through them and not let it completely dampen us and dampen our spirit because we're still here. Cancer is not allowed to steal our future. We are still here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. And you guys, I'm so excited to share all this information in the show notes. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions and reach out to Robin for any kind of hormonal help. Thanks, guys.